Welcome back, listeners. This is Joan with the Joan Jerkovich Show on 910 KINA Salina. We're back here wrapping up our conversation with Ashley Sheridan, talking about a very unique situation where her father was murdered and her mother has gone to jail for life for that murder. But Ashley's real story is that, her mother is innocent and that there were a lot of things that happened in her trial and in her sentencing, as well as the fact that we hear about, some suspects who've actually come up and confessed to the murder, of course, like Ashley said, this was in a bar. Of course it was in a bar and someone overheard it and came and brought it forward. But that hasn't gone anywhere, right? Right. And so tell me a little bit about how you've maintained a relationship with your mother, because I know you're very close to her. How do you do that when you're a young little girl and then a young woman with her in prison?
Well, I'll tell you, Joan, it's very, very difficult, growing up without a mother, especially for, a girl. And we've maintained contact through mail, through phone calls, and I visit her every Saturday that I can, and I have ever since she was in prison.
And where is she at?
She's at Topeka Correctional Facility.
She's in Topeka, so even though you live and work here in Salina, you will drive to Topeka every Saturday that you can get away to see her. Do you have a limited amount of time that you can spend with her?
It's 8-hour visitations, so.
Oh, so you can spend the majority of the day.
Yeah.
And I'm sorry I don't, thankfully I haven't had your life experience, but I don't know much about that. And do you get out or be in a outdoor area, or do they have some nice areas where you can get something to eat together, spend time together?
There's vending machines, and it's just a very small table in an enclosed room, and with other, inmates and their guests.
And guards, I'm sure.
Yeah.
So there's really no privacy even.
Right.
And then I would assume you have to go through a pretty rigorous screening process just to get in the doors.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to walk through a metal detector and send your things through an X-ray machine. So.
And now, when you were little, who did you live with? Because obviously you needed care.
I lived with my aunt and uncle, and then
Would this be her sister,
her brother, and her sister-in-law?
Okay.
For 3 years, and then the other 3 years, I believe, I lived with my stepdad.
Okay. So you didn't ever end up in the foster system?
I did whenever she was charged on a fraudulent charge, but this was before she was put in prison for the actual murder.
Okay, so for the most part, you had family.
Yeah.
And you're certainly like your dad, like you said, your stepdad was the main person who took care of you, and he is still in your life. Is that correct?
Yes, definitely.
And does he ever go visit with you, or does he take his own time to visit?
Yes, both.
Both of those.
Yeah.
And then is Saturday the day that they're available for visitation, or can you go
Saturday and Sunday.
Always on a weekend?
And some holidays too.
And some holidays. Are you ever, speaking of holidays, ever to bring gifts, or do those have to be very carefully monitored? I'm sure they do.
We can't bring anything in.
You can't take anything, and you're pretty much, searched and go through X-ray machines and all of that too.
Yeah.
So how, just in general, has this affected you? I mean, you seem so strong in that you went through school to become an RN. I'm an RN, you know that, and it's not easy.
Yeah, definitely.
It's
only been by my faith in God, and my mother has always been very, very strong Christian, and she's enforced the, wholesome values of Christianity and those things in me. And yes, I've had some setbacks, and I've had some, mistakes I've made, but through my faith in God, I've been able to learn and overcome those and persevere, thankfully.
Well, thankfully, but don't apologize for some things, because I know kids who have good, solid, parents at home and have setbacks and things. Some of that's just called growing up a little bit, or maybe getting a little smart.
Yeah, definitely.
Maturing and getting a little smarter. And it's just hard for me though to believe that you have to have this relationship. Is there something that almost might feel like a death in a way, to have her so distant, or do the letters and everything keep that alive?
The letters keep that alive, but initially I cried myself to sleep every night for the first 2 years we were apart, and it did feel that way. It really did.
And because again, even when you were little, you got to see her about once a week, but she wasn't there.
Right.
With you all the time. So who taught you to be a young woman? Was your aunt something of a substitute?
Yes, somewhat.
Although that was only a few years when you were pretty little, right?
My mom has just always been a very, very strong, positive role model for me.
Even in prison,
Even in
she's
prison.
been able to be there and to be a mother and to counsel you. And now, do you have access to her by phone? Say you've had a bad breakup with a boyfriend, or you've had something, at work or whatever. Do you have that kind of access to her?
No, I'm not able to call her. She only is able to call me.
Okay, so you could be having a really tough day, and it's like, I need my mom, but you
Yeah.
can't access her because of this.
Right.
And then, is there anything that, you can tell us about where you garner that strength? And it may be something in the same answer you said about your mother, from being a little girl being molested by your father. Where do you find that strength to move on?
My only answer is through God. I don't, because I'm not able to explain it, and there's no other way that I could ever, imagine.
Does that have really far-reaching, tendrils of emotion and trauma and all of that?
Definitely.
Has anyone, or was there ever a system, even something through the social system or the public system that would give you, as a little girl, counseling to help with any of that? Have you received any of that kind of help?
No, I haven't.
You're all on your own.
Yeah, and a lot of it has been by faith, so it's...
Well, and wasn't this too something that you felt in just talking with you briefly, that some of the problem with your mother was with her trial was that she had to have a public defender again, because we're talking about people who don't have all that money. We
Right.
don't have the O.J. Simpson budget,
Right.
Mhm.
Mhm.
And did you feel that was a factor with your mother's
Oh, yes.
sentencing and the trial, the outcome of it?
This was his first murder or criminal case, so he was very inexperienced.
No.
Yeah.
Are you serious? A
I'm
public
serious.
defender, and he had never tried a criminal case, a murder case, and you were too little to maybe understand some of that, but I know you had even mentioned that you had a pretty rough time on the stand because you were just a little girl at 8.
Mhm.
And tell me what happened with, your questioning on the stand.
I was questioned by the prosecutor regarding the abuse of my father, and the judge left the courtroom during that questioning, and the prosecutor...
The
badgered
judge
me.
left the courtroom?
Yeah.
That's interesting.
And the prosecutor badgered me until I was crying uncontrollably. And he actually made my mom go sit at the back of the courtroom. And then after I was in tears, he turned and looked at my mom and smiled and sat back down.
So your one support wasn't even there for you. Well, Ashley, it's a riveting story, and I hope people stay tuned to go on to joanjerkovich.com for the video outtakes. I think we're not done talking here, so we'll be talking a bit on there. And it's also going to set you on to some links with our iTunes and my blog site. Thanks so much for joining Ashley and I today for the innovative talk radio that surprises, entertains, and sometimes informs you, The Joan Jerkovich Show, 9 a.m. Saturdays on 910 KINA. Went a little bit over for you, didn't I? Not too bad. Well, that's just, the whole story is just kind of makes my skin crawl. I don't even know what to say.
Well,
I just
yes,
can't imagine. I can't imagine living through all that.
You had some really great questions.
Well, thank you.
Yeah.
No, you were just wonderful to talk about and talk with, and
Thank
so
you.
composed for what you're talking about, because there were times I would just feel this emotion welling up in me, and I know it's been a long time that you've had to process a lot of things and
Yeah.
deal with it, but I hope somebody's going to listen to this and
I do
see
too.
this and hear it and maybe come to your aid to help you fight this situation, because you certainly don't have the funds.
Right.
You're just supporting yourself and probably paying off some school loans. I wouldn't be surprised. So it'd be great to see if someone might step forward and help you out.
I definitely feel like that could be a possibility.
Some sort of advocacy group, or even maybe some of the law students who want to take on a case or something
Yeah.
like that.
Yeah.
And the other thing, it's interesting, no forensic evidence, DNA is everything nowadays, and all of that kind of thing. So, but wow, I'd sure want to get after, and fingerprints, but no weapon was found.
No blood or hair samples.
No weapon was ever found. So, to get the fingerprints and see if these two people who confessed, if they had really could tie them to it. So,
Yeah.
Do you think that's one of the stronger leads, just to figure out who these suspects
Yeah.
are and take a closer look at them?
I think so. I mean, it definitely would be an avenue, and the KBI called it, or the forensic investigators called it, the perfect murder. Like because there was no evidence, you know, and
But not so perfect for your mother and her
Right.
brother,
Yeah.
because without evidence.
or they called
just
it the
kind
work of a professional. I'm sorry.
Threw it up.
Yeah.
Well, yeah, the work of a
So.
professional. That's frightening. And what's frightening is you wonder where those people are now.
Yeah.
And what have
Yeah.
they done after this? You know, because how many years ago? 92? That's a good, number of years ago that, good 14, 15 years ago. What have they done since? I mean, I'm not a believer that they just kind of all of a sudden straightened up.
Yeah.
You know,
No,
I mean,
no.
I bet they could actually be in prison for something else.
Something
but
else. That's
Still,
probably a big
that your
possibility.
mother and her brother are there. So, now you don't have any siblings, do you?
I have a half brother and a half
A
sister.
half and a half. Now, is that through your stepdad or just as your mother again?
My mom has a son with
Mhm.
someone else.
Okay.
But she was married
Mhm.
previously,
Mhm.
and let's see. So he's younger than me, and then I
Mhm.
have a half sister from my real father, who was
Mhm.
with this,
Mhm.
living with this lady that he had the daughter with
Mm.
at that time.
Mhm.
So
Right. So she stayed on with the woman he had been living with at the time of his murder. That was her child.
right,
Right. Right. And so, any relationships with those half siblings?
yeah. Unfortunately, no.
Yeah. All of it has to get real sticky and
It
real
does.
challenging and real difficult, and so. Well, thank you so much,
Yeah.
Ashley. Thanks for coming
Thank
in to
you.
talk to me.
Thank you so
So
much.
appreciate your story, and if there's new developments, please call to come back. So.